Why do prequels suck? This week, Harry Potter joins the legion of other mega franchises like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and gets its own prequel series in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Will this prequel suck as much as those prequels sucked? I guess it's arguable whether those prequels sucked. I personally didn't enjoy them, and I have not seen Fantastic Beasts yet. I don't know whether it's any good or not. You better not spoil me in the comments. But that seems to be the general consensus, right? Prequels suck almost universally. The Star Wars prequels are almost universally panned. The Hobbit movies were not as poorly received, but kind of had a lukewarm reception compared to the love affair the world had with Lord of the Rings. And so what happens? What makes those prequels kind of weaker in comparison? There's this term in storytelling, in media res, which means you begin in the middle as things are happening. And sometimes that means like in the old Saturday morning cartoons we used to watch where they'd have a cold open that's like in the middle of an action scene in Batman or Spider-Man or at death's door, and you're kind of like, how are they going to get out of this? And then after the opening intro, we come back to days earlier and we kind of find out how they got there. But it also kind of just applies to stories in general. You want to begin as characters are doing stuff, as things are happening, and then have the gaps filled in as you go. An example of this is Deadpool. It starts off at literally the middle of the movie and then kind of goes back and forth and fills in those gaps. I don't know if that's the most effective version of that in my opinion, but think about a classic movie, Terminator. Starts with Reese and the Terminator already being sent back in time, and we don't find out why till much later. The Indiana Jones films hardly give you any backstory to Indy until the third movie. And finally, the Star Wars movies themselves originally started with Episode 4. It didn't get that label till a little bit later, but it's in the middle of this giant epic war, and you never really find out all the details till the prequels. And you know what? That was fine. You might have been imagining like, oh, what were the Clone Wars like? Or, oh, what was Anakin like before he became Vader? But you didn't need that for the story to work. And the traditional problem I find with prequels is they feel the need to spoon feed you every element. They begin at the beginning. And beginnings are usually pretty boring. I mean, think about your day, right? You roll out of bed. You rub the crusties out of your eyes, you make yourself some breakfast, go to the bathroom, shower. That's all dull as dirt. It's not until your day gets going that it really could get interesting. And the same thing is kind of true of stories. Most backstory information you don't really need to focus on. An issue I had with Marvel's latest film, Doctor Strange, is it starts literally at the point where you could not tell any more story. It's just him being a surgeon, doing his day-to-day life, then they go to the car crash, then they go to the Himalayas, or wherever the hell he trained. They couldn't use the Himalayas because of China. Whatever. As it is, I'm surprised we didn't get any scenes of him buying watches or accepting awards. My point is, all that stuff is kind of perfunctory and could have been filled in with flashbacks or a little bit of dialogue throughout the movie. Basically like Batman Begins did. Not that those movies needed more comparisons, but you get my drift. Also with prequels, a lot of that backstory that's been teased out, audiences kind of have built up their own versions of in their head, so when they actually see it, are almost inevitably disappointed. I don't care what you imagine the Clone Wars being, it probably wasn't what they were shown to be in those movies. And also, screw those movies for skipping over the Clone Wars entirely and leaving that for an animated series, but that's another conversation for another day. The point is, Anakin sounds like an amazing character when you find out he becomes Darth Vader, but when you go back to Little Annie and Phantom Menace, it's like, man, that's it? And yeah, that's it. Another example of them trying to fit the expectation people have for a movie is something like The Hobbit. The Hobbit, the book, came out before Lord of the Rings, but when they were making the movies, they felt the need to change it to match those films, so suddenly it became a lot darker and so much longer. As hard as it is for a sequel to capitalize on a movie, it's much harder for a prequel to fill in those gaps because normally there's not as much story to tell because the best bits went into the original movie and you already know where everything ends up, which is a big burden for a show like Gotham that's building up towards Batman. Little Bruce Wayne's what, 10? And we've already got a bunch of the supervillains already running around because they don't know what else to do with that show as they wait for that kid to get old enough to be Batman. Prequels aren't typically allowed to just be their own stories. A whole bunch of magical, amazing things should have happened before Fantastic Beasts ever begins. And we may never revisit those things, but they inform what happens in Fantastic Beasts and allows it to be its own film with its own beginning and middle and end and its own backstory that fills in what's happening. With a prequel, just like a sequel, you can't rely on the movie that it's being based on. It has to function on its own, and so many prequels really don't. And hopefully Fantastic Beasts does. We'll find out. And if you want to know my thoughts on Fantastic Beasts specifically, I'm going to review it with Sam Bashor on a special episode of Only Stupid Answers. We've got a very special guest coming in. You guys should definitely tune in for that. We drop new episodes every Monday on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and Google Play Music and many other platforms, so please check that out. Please let me know in the comments down below or tweet me at DJ Talks Trash what you think of prequels and what your favorite prequels are. And next week, my videos are moving to Wednesday. This is the last video I'm going to do for a while that's going to happen on Friday. My new videos are going to be uploaded at 1 p.m. on Wednesdays, so stay tuned for that and have a great weekend. Thank you for joining me.